Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are with one of the most relevant topic, the cyber security. You know that technologists are having free time nowadays, so the vulnerability to cyber security is actually at a threat. So we took the right and relevant topic. I just wanted to let you know that while we are in the meeting, kindly mute all the devices. If you are using two devices, kindly mute both the devices so that it will not be a nuisance in the meeting. And if you have any questions, you can raise the hands with the emoji, and you can drop the questions in the inbox also. At the end of the towards the end of the meeting, we will address each and every questions. Thank you. Over to Ashwini ji.
Good afternoon. Thank you, CA Jibu, for beginning the session. And good afternoon to all of you. Welcome for today's session. As CA Jibu mentioned, it's a very relevant topic, very hot topic. And we all are concerned, and it's applicable to all of us, both in our personal life as well as in our professional lives. Because without cyber, there's no world today, and especially so where we are seeing in this lockdown situation and the COVID situation that everything is happening over the net. So cyber security is all the more important for us, and that's why a very apt topic, that cyber security in the new normal of post-COVID. I'm sure everybody is very interested in hearing both the speakers that we have today. And Rajesh is a good friend. I was working with him in KPMG. And through Rajesh, we came to know about Mr. Dinesh also. So without much further ado, I hand over back to CA Jibu and my team. We will have the brief introductions and then we will begin with the session. Welcome again.
Hello, Bhavani ji, you can welcome the speaker.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. I would like to introduce Mr. Rajesh Sapkal. He is one of the speakers of today's session. Mr. Rajesh Sapkal, he is the founder of Decipher Technologies, a core information security consulting firm. And he has been instrumental in successfully completing complex assignments for various organizations, private as well as government. He is responsible for client delivery as well as the testing lab in Pune, India, which specializes in cyber security testing, incident response, SOC, etc. He has got about 20 years of experience in areas of information security, cyber security, and DFIR. He has successfully completed cyber security consulting assignments for various banks, financial institutions, spanning Asia, Middle East, US, UK markets. Decipher Technologies also manages the global security of a big manufacturer and its subsidiaries in India. Rajesh is also a special police officer for various law enforcement agencies in India and has been responsible for investigation of many high-profile and successful cases. Mr. Rajesh, welcome to the session. Now I hand over the mic to Mr. Sajeev to introduce Mr. Dinesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavani ji. Let me introduce Mr. Dinesh Bareja. Mr. Dinesh is a principal consultant and an advisor. Dinesh is a lead consultant focused on delivery management of ISO and related cybersecurity projects across sectors. He has over 15 years of experience in IT domain and specializes in security strategy, quality of delivery, risk management, compliance, and governance areas. One of the internet and cybersecurity pioneers in the country and ISACA Gold member. A few of his skill sets: business consulting and advisory services for IT and IS strategy, ISO compliance, ISMS, BCP, implementation and continuous improvement, cyber insurance advisory, senior management communication and training and awarenesses. These are his few of the skill sets. When it comes to the professional experience, responsible for governance, security implementation, and security maturity assessment or assessment at various in India, Canada, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, Kenya, Rwanda. He has been in advisory positions with various government, public, private organizations for cybersecurity, assisting in strategy development, operation risk evaluation, and policy development. He's an established speaker, security awareness, delivery, and trainer for cybersecurity and certifications. He has been having a lot of certifications. It's including Certified Information System Auditor, Certified Information Security Manager, ITIF, ITIL, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Enterprise Security, Certified ISO 27001, I certified ISO 22301, then internal training COVID. So these are certifications, a few of the certifications he has. I welcome Dinesh Bareja. All the best. Thank you. All the best. Over to Bhavani.
So we request Mr. Dinesh Bareja to please commence his session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks for the introduction. Pleasure to be with all of you virtually. It would have been a bigger pleasure to be there, in person, but man proposes, God disposes. So it's like that way. But I do hope this session will be of value to you. And Oman has, like I was telling before, as we were just on the meeting room together, that Oman has a special place, and I've been there and spent, like I said, 3 weeks at the most. That was the longest time I spent over there. And I can tell you that I was with, it was a small assignment which I had done for RMS. And let's hope I get the opportunity to come back again. And just to say one thing, that Ashwini, like you mentioned, you said very correctly that cybersecurity is our professional as well as personal issue. And that is normal. But as we talk about the new normal over here, let me also say before I start off is that the cybersecurity was normal, is normal, and will be normal. So it's like, we sort of would overlook it before this COVID thing happened. But now it's like in our face. So having said that, let's take a look. I put this scene on purpose, so it's just remind me of Oman in its own way. And so, like I said, is that we are floating along, and the coronavirus permeates our life. The same holds true for cybersecurity. We think we know it all, but there's a lot to learn because it is part of life. And life, as you all know, is something you never learn. And I'm sure you agree the same thing about your profession also as professional auditors, that the learning never stops. And in terms of cybersecurity, as we secure our lives, there are lessons to be learned for cybersecurity, which we will try to do a little bit of justice today to that, to the learning effort. Okay, and so let us get in. This is me. Thank you very much for the introduction. Slightly, I'll add a bit more over here. I have the India Watch and the HoneyNet project and Open Security Alliance. I have a couple of, I would say, these are sort of profitably unprofitable ventures, or sort of, which I do. I'm an advisor with a couple of organizations, and I was the ex-advisor with the CDRC, that was an organization of Jharkhand Police. I do work in strategy, education, certification, operations, all these areas. So, but you can read it later on, which will be there in the recording anyway. So that's how it is. So the new normal, what is it? The past 6 months have taught us a lot about new things. And the most important lesson is that normal meant normal, but not anymore. So it's taken a new avatar, and that's why we call it the new normal. Of course, we've learned a lot of new words also. We've learned words like lockdown and Corona and COVID, and we know that Corona is not a beer anymore. So a lot of things which we have learned along the way. And of course, we also in Bombay. I live in Bombay, in Mumbai, by the way, and it's lockdown, very strongly locked down. So you get even your daily rations or whatever is available, but it's available. It's a bit of a challenge. Yes, that's how it is. That's a new normal for us nowadays over here. So when give me a moment, I will have to find this control. Yeah. So normal changed. Normal is not changed now. Video panel. Now I have this meeting controls, Ashwini, which is coming up in my this channel. I'm a co-host, and that is very disturbing. So anyway, not an issue. So a normal change in 9/11, 2001, and as you all know, after this, the amount of security checks or whatever, and the things which came up, and the difficulty as far as what do you call it, getting in the US or whatever. Life changed. Yes, life did change. Normal changed at that time. Normal changed again in Mumbai, in India. Okay. We had the bombings, 2011, 2006, 2003, right? We had more also. I have not listed them all. And then we had the terror attacks. So every incident like that changed normal. Today we have the new normal, which is brought about by COVID, right? So, and what does COVID do right now? It's arriving. How are we arriving at the new normal? I'm going to spend a few minutes, just sort of putting the context together over here, and then we'll sort of move into the cybersecurity area. Okay. So, so in December to January, did we even think that something like that could happen when it was happening in China? And we were reading in the news every day that they were doing this or they were doing that. No, we did not. We were in denial, right? And then it's hit us. Panic all around, right? And then we started reparations. We hope we'll get everybody home and shut down and whatever and whatever. So we started getting our act together, right? What do we do? How do we survive? What do we do? How will we survive? How will things happen? Etc. 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 Right? Then we say, okay, let's bring people back home. How do they reach home? Whatever. Put regulations, put rules, put this, put that in June to September. This is what we're going to do now, or we plan to do, right? Recovery. Do you think we'll recover by June 21? Small recovery, bilateral. With the amount of damage which has been done to the economy, the amount of damage which has been done to the people, and the amount of damage which has been done to every single institution. For example, in Muscat, I'm sure there were people who have gone home from Muscat, the expats over there. Okay. And in India, I'm sure you're all seeing the thousands, the millions of people who are going back home and how they are going back home, the difficulty which they have over there. Okay. Now, with all that in place, October, June, and 2021 seems like they have to go back home. Now they've taken 6 months, 3-4 months to go back home. They'll spend a month or two, and then they'll start coming back to work. They'll trickle back to work. It will not be the same sort of migration, I would say. So we're looking at June 21, July 21. And what is normal again? Smaller, more cooperation, traffic only returns to 75. And there's already talk about work from home continuing. There's already talk about like we had the head of TCS having said that he would have about 75% of his people working from home. Now that's 450,000 people, and you have 75%, which means about 300,000 people working from home. Is it possible? I don't know, but maybe he spoke a bit too early, because today even companies which have got 50, 100 or 1,000 people working from home, even they have a huge challenge. How did they get to start working? It's like, somebody was talking to me and I said, okay, let me remind you, let me think about what sort of like example I can give. The day lockdown was announced today, and by tomorrow morning, nobody can move out of home or office or wherever. You can't go to office. So it is like, and then you started learning that, yes, how do you start working from home or do this or do that? So if you remember, there was there is this tradition, or even a medical sort of this thing where they say that you make a baby start learning to swim, you throw the baby into a swimming pool, and the baby struggles, and usually the baby starts swimming. So that's the baby's animal instinct, which is sort of putting the baby over there. So it was the same thing which happened with us over here. You are just thrown into the wild, work from home. That's it. So whether it's 100,000 people, it's 500,000 people, you just have to do it. And I tell you, IT teams have had nightmares trying to do whatever. And there are some IT teams which are still till date who are working on trying to facilitate things. Okay. So so that's why the whole question comes up, is that July 21, or are we talking about July 22? Now you guys are all qualified as internal audit and as well as statutory audits, and you've had tremendous amount of experience with what you guys are doing over there. So it's your thought into what it will be. By the way, we will have some questions to thrown out to the audience. We have how many? We've got 44 people. Very good. So we have 44 people who will be able to let us know some sort of gyan which we'll try to pick back from you people. So how does it feel today? You now know what it is like to be under house arrest. You're under constant threat of death. You go out, somebody will kill you. Now it's not a gun which will kill you, but somebody will kill you. So it's not like being, let us say, it was in New York or one of those bad cities. Mistrust anyone who comes within 3 feet of you. So whether you're a man or a woman, somebody comes within 3 feet of you, you say, "Oh, Baba, stay away from me." And everybody is a killer. So even if it is your own relative who's coming to meet you, let us say from far away, or you go to meet your relative, you don't want to, you will think twice before you start hugging that person as you did in old times. Then with the television news, you're obsessed with watching television news, and it's got nothing but Corona on its head, day in and day out. So you're just fatigued with that. That's happening nowadays. That's what we are. Okay, and then of course forget about you looking at everybody with suspicion, with the mistrust. When you go anywhere, everybody looks at you with suspicion also. You have clean air, you have clean hands because you're washing it n times a day, and you have an idle and a dirty mind. And you say you are never again going to ask for a holiday. You've had enough of it. 3 months of doing nothing, man. At least you guys in Oman are still better off than us. We have June 30th also. So that was, and frankly, I am not very confident about opening up after June also. Let me tell you that. And it's only be like, you'll have to go against what the government says. And of course, like I said, the last point being that you're approaching broke. Your wallet is going empty. Your bank account is going emptier day by day. And so you have to think in terms of that also. And the only news that makes news is this COVID-19 update. So this is the only news which is there. Anyway, so I think we've set the context enough, and so let us get into what we have met, what we have meeting up to do, okay, and which is cybersecurity primarily. So the fundamentals, of course, of cybersecurity do not change. Whether it's whatever it is the risks, it is the risk perceptions, it is whatever which will change. So, and you will of course agree on one fact, that the computer has remained a computer. That has not changed. Yes, it has become smaller. It has become a mobile phone. It has become a tablet. The mobile phone has packs more power than what you had on a desktop about 20 15 years back, right? So, but what is changing us, or what is changing, is our need. What are our needs? What are the fears which we have? What are the perceptions which we have? And how are you going to fulfill it? Because it's not just us. See, we may have 100 different needs, but whether the environment around us can allow us to fulfill it in the way we want to fulfill it. Okay. So we're not digressing, like I said earlier. Okay. Cybersecurity meetings, we're getting a focus back. We talked about this thing. So fundamental facts, risk assessment. So it's not if, but when will a cyber attack hit you? So you may think that will it, won't it? No, it will hit you some one fine day or the other. When will you get hit again? You got hit once, don't think it's not going to come back to you. So you have to keep your guard up. People think, once it's done, that guy has taken a ransomware from me or he's this thing and he's not going to come back. No, don't worry. There are hundreds of different guys doing ransomware. Nobody knows who did it. And even the guy who did it to you will come back again. So you better keep your guard up. And some don't even know if they've been hit. And this is again classic out of life. See, I always give an example that cybersecurity sort of mimics life in its own way. And again, at the cost of sounding a bit inappropriate, this is again, out of what do you call? I could say our grandparents or mythology or whatever, saying it, giving us those stories for centuries, and not just to us in India but everywhere in the world, because the stories are the same. They may be said differently. So the whole thing over here is that if something is going wrong in your house, and if you know what I mean, you're the last person to know it. You will be the last person to know that something is going wrong in your house. Somebody from the outside is the one who will come and tell you, "Arey, there was something wrong over there. Be careful," right? So it's like, or you can say another thing, like if you have a tear on your pant or your clothes or something, or if you have a stain on your shirt or something, you wouldn't know, but somebody would come and say, "Hey, you got a stain over there, so just can you go and correct it or whatever." So you don't know you've been hit. You would not know. And in any case, if you go through the number of reports about data breach, there's Ponemon and Verizon, and these guys have very good reports. You will learn that the usual time taken for a breach to be discovered by a company is anything between 120, 150 to about 200 plus days. So that is the amount of time which it's there. Somebody said something, or somebody switched on his or her mic, went off mute. Anyway, so not just at the cost of repeating, and unfortunately, this happened in Oman. This is just the week back. I am not sure if you guys had a problem with your internet, but according to the the tweets which followed over here, there were some people who were talked about the tweets doing this. But it is about 2 or 3 days late, and I do know that Oman CERT is pretty good and pretty proactive. So this is 2 or 3 days old now, and they would have got it done, or they would have recovered or whatever within no time at all, because this is not really something very big. Yeah.
To add, more than the internet, it's a payment gateway which has been affected.
Okay. Because I saw something about some people not being able to pay bill or whatever, like they're saying over here. So in any case, whatever went down, I am sure they took it up back the same within the few hours or whatever their SLA was. Because like I said, I do know Oman CERT is pretty proactive and pretty good skills they have. So the number of CERTs in the Middle East area, they have good skills, good guessing. So cyber existence and life. You'll find I'll keep on talking about life as we keep on going ahead, and primarily it's because, and like Ashish rightly said in the beginning, when she said the context, is that personal. It is personal and it is professional, whatever way you say. So even when you talk about your enterprise cybersecurity, you will find a lot of things which are done over there, which are commonsensical, and which actually I would say you can sort of align them with what you have, what you do in real life. So like risk management, for example, you're in life, you're doing a risk management, continuous risk management, which you're supposed to be doing as part of your cybersecurity implementation also, and which you don't do. And if you don't do if you don't do risk management in your real life, you're going to be in trouble in any case. So that is how it is. This is, I'm sure all of you guys who are doing risk know about this, known unknowns, unknown unknowns, known unknowns, right? So this is an emotional view. There are two views I've got over here. This is, an emotional view over here. When you have you have known unknowns and you have known knowns, things we are aware and you understand. You have unknown knowns, things we understand but are not aware of. You have known unknowns, things you are aware of but you don't understand. And unknown unknowns, things we neither are aware or not understand. So it's like, let's say, like death, for example. It's an unknown, it's an unknown unknown. You just don't know what it is all about. Or known unknown. My typical example of a known unknown or an unknown known is, I would say, the pandemic which we are facing right now. I tell you that every one of you who has been through a business continuity and disaster recovery meeting or a awareness training, okay, or an implementation, one of the line items is pandemic. We always say that, okay, among these scenarios which you have, flood, fire, water, this, that, or whatever, and pandemic. Okay. And I was doing a BCP awareness session with some senior management just in the month of January. And we said pandemic. And I remember the discussion, we said pandemic, hota kya hai? Hota hai, okay, there can be a medical emergency, it can be SARS, Ebola, this sort of chikungunya, that sort of stuff. So, okay, but it's not really, it doesn't really come so fast. I said, yes, you're right, it doesn't come, but it's something which one has to take care of, right? At that time, at that time, if I had told those senior managers, that senior team over there, that you may consider a scenario where you may have to close down for like 3 months or 4 months, they would have taken the check back, kicked me on my backside and told me to get out from there. Because it was something totally unknown and unbelievable that something like this can happen. And lo, in a month's time or 1 month and a half, one fine day, our dear Prime Minister announces, from tomorrow, stay at home, you're under house arrest. Okay, and the whole country goes under house arrest because the whole world has gone under house arrest. And some people have come out earlier on bail, some people have not come out on bail, some people are still there, right? So today, if we go and tell people that if you have a pandemic scenario, let's just consider that, okay, you'll be out in about maybe 1 week or 10 days time. And they will again kick you out because they say you don't know how it works. A pandemic means at least 2 to 3 months time. So that's the learning, right? And this is the emotional view, of course. Now let us see the risk-based view. Unknown unknowns, hidden facts. These are untapped knowledge. You don't know about it, but somebody else in the community knows about it. Unknown knowns, right? So here is something you know, something which is known but unknown to you. Untapped knowledge. Unknown knowns at the top right-hand, this thing. Totally unknown risks. You don't know about it. Nobody knows about it. Nobody knows what will go wrong in a space. You know that there is space. You know that we are sending people. But we don't know what can go wrong over there. So whoever goes there has to would possibly be given $100 million insurance or something like that. You know, it's like going to the moon, going to Mars or wherever. Unknown unknowns. Classic risk, more predominant. You have the knowledge of probability and impact of value of service. And known knowns, okay, they are not risk, they are managed as part of the project and scope. And when we talk about security, about cyber security, information security, security in any which way, you have to remember these essentials. And I tell you one thing, that this is the, like in Hindi, they say this is Guru Mantra. Okay. So you keep this in mind and you are home. People, process and technology. 3 things: people, process, technology. Keep that at the bottom of the bottom of your thought process, and start thinking in terms of these 3 areas. Who are the people who are there with you? What are the processes you are running in the business? What technologies are you using? Now, these are similar questions you ask when you're doing an ITGC audit. Okay, it is part of your statutory audit. You are doing ITGC. Some of the times you will do it yourself, or you will call a third party to do it for you, if you have a conflict of interest or a thought over there. But this is what you will ask for. Technology which is being used for your financial transactions. You will go and check that. You will see the processes which are used for the financial transactions, right? The people, are the segregation of duty in place or not? So competency is there or not? Define roles and responsibilities. Very simple stuff. And this is where things go wrong. Everywhere you find it's very simple, but things go wrong because they are too simple and people tend to overlook. The whole process is so, the people think what? Okay, so what? So what? There's nothing here. There's there's nothing. It's not rocket science. Walking on the street is not rocket science. You walk in the middle of the road, you will die. That is rocket science. That is when you will learn rocket science, that what happens after death, right? But until then, it's not rocket science. Walking on the street is not rocket science, but walking on the street and then getting in the middle of the road is rocket science. Correct. So process, what do you do for governance? How do you do governance? Is it, are your KPIs in place? Are you doing internal audits? What are you doing? How is your continuity? How is your improvement? What are you doing? In terms of technology, what technologies have you implemented? Okay. What sort of security hardware and software are you using? What is it that you're doing? Do you have a security operations center? Nowadays, every bank is being asked by the central banks to put up a SOC, or to at least put it out somebody else. So once I have this in place, or I identified these, I have to apply my next formula to that. The most fundamental triad for information security, the CIA: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. 3 words which I don't need to sort of explain to qualified auditors, okay? Because this is part of your learning all along. The integrity is your your learning. Availability is your learning. Confidentiality is your learning, and that is your lifeblood in you. That is your lifeblood as far as the work which you do, as far as your profession is concerned. You are expected, and you do maintain the confidentiality of the clients which you meet. Okay, the integrity, your integrity is your integrity. It is the integrity of the work which you do. It is the integrity of the work you present. That is there. And availability. You are available to the client, but of course that is from this thing, but not from the security perspective. From the security perspective, confidentiality would be the confidentiality of the documents or whatever you have, the data which you have, your information assets. Now, information assets, again, please remember that can be tangible and intangible. So even your printouts are information assets. Your processes are information assets too. So there's IPR, there is processes, there is printouts, okay, the ideas. All this is information assets. The confidentiality of it is very, very critical or sensitive to the client organization. The integrity of whatever is done, primary importance again. That nothing which whatever is created, any document, any statement, any this thing, it should be, the integrity should be sacrosanct, and so that there is the element of non-repudiation which is in place, and there is traceability. So as an auditor, when I go in, or when you go in, you will be asking for traceability. You will ask for logs. You'll ask for the traceability by itself, or a chain of custody, and you should get it. And it should not be tampered with, and you should be able to confirm that it is in such a manner that it is not tampered. And availability. So we are talking of cybersecurity. So your cyber assets, your systems, your infrastructure, the availability of that to business should be on demand and as needed. So somebody can't stand up and say that, sir, this is not available right now, please do it tomorrow. You may lose money at that time. For example, maybe you have a tender closing today evening and you have to send the bid, but the mail system is down and it has to go from your mailbox. Then what do? That is now, it's a situation where you know that you could have got the bid, you could have bid successfully for that, but because the mail system is down, you are now unable to send your bid itself. So that is where it hurts, totally hurts. Now, see, we are still not in the normal. We are still not out of today's normal, but like I said, this is fundamental and this does not change at all. So even the changes which come in, they will be because of the new needs, because of the new environment or whatever. And when change comes in, it is changed by itself. And it is, of course, cybersecurity is a big black hole. So whether you protect it or you attack or breach it, either which way, it is something which, you have to sort of look at it in that manner. And it's all about money. And nobody in this world understands money better than a chartered accountant. Anyone who breaks it, anyone who protects it, it's about money. To protect it, you need money. So the CISO or whoever has to go and ask, beg, borrow, and steal from the CEO or the chairman or the board. And the person or the persons who come and hack you or break into your system are doing it for money also. To get into your bank account, to get your money out, to get your IP, to get your company assets, information, and sell it or do whatever with it, right? So here we have a question for the audience. Okay, I'm not looking for an answer right now, but you have time to think about it. In about 5-10 minutes or a few slides ahead of this, that time we will look at the questions, at the responses. You can put the response in the chat box. If you want to talk, I think we can allow that. Ashwini, what do you say?
Sure, whatever. So long as it's not going to be too much of a crosstalk, it should be okay.
Yeah, then it's cool. So yeah, it can be one-on-one. So that is not a problem. So I think the first preference is of course chat, and otherwise raise your hand and we can ask one by one to this thing. But of course we can't spend a lot of time. We may be able to spend 5 or 10 minutes for doing that, and the questions or the responses can be brief, and it'll be very interesting to have the discussion. Okay, so we have a chat, we have a response right now. Hang on, what does he say? Yeah, okay, that is right. Fair enough. So here goes. So will security budgets shrink or will they grow post COVID-19? This is part one of the question, and part two. What is your expected percentage change, plus or minus? So it'd be great to have some or all of you responding. If all of you respond, there'll be 50 guys who will be responding, and it'll be difficult to sort of take care of all of them. But we'll do something. But I seem to have handled a bit more than this number. But yes, we will do something. No problem at all.
So if somebody is raising their hand, we can ask them to speak with calling out.
Exactly. Yeah. Dhaval, that was fast, man. And Sandeep Kunte also great, very fast. Good. And it all sounds nice from my perspective. Thank you very much. 20% great, man. So okay. So anyway, to move on, there's business as present. What are we doing? What were we doing? Okay. And business as usual as we get out of the lockdown and the COVID scene. So business at present was what? Working from home. We are now working from home. There's a spike in cyber crimes with COVID-19 as a attack vector. Lots of crimes happening with COVID-19. I hope none of you got hit by anything like that, because I'm sure there must have been attacks over here also. Major breach disclosures like Cognizant was one, and there were others too. Cyber attacks went up 37% month on month. Cloudflare said that. Phishing was up by 600%. Phishing attacks. Then, of course, Interpol seized $14 million worth of fake COVID pharma. We also did some investigation for the Maharashtra police over here, and we were able to identify some sites selling COVID blood. Now, can you believe that? For $10,000 or $30,000, $30,000 for a small vial. Then there was a cyber attack on a nuclear missile, US nuclear missile subcontractor. This is, by the way, one thing which you should write on a piece of paper, tie it, and put it in your handkerchief and keep it out or keep it on your desktop every day. Third-party risk assessment, very, very important. People don't do it, and people are very badly hit by that. The worst hit, I would say, till date has been Target, the department store, the large department guy in the US. Target got hit because of their third party. Target was not the biggest one, but the biggest was in Iran. I'll tell you about that also. So we started with Target because Target, what happened was that their HVAC contractor was infected. And when they had a problem at one of their stores, this gentleman came across, the engineer came along, and he plugged his machine into the HVAC control panel, which obviously is the normal SOP for him. And when he did that to do the repairs and to look at the system, he in turn infected the Target infrastructure, the network. And from there, it passed on to the complete Target network across the country or whatever. And after that, it was history. They spent, I think, about 200 or 300 or $400 million to just get back from there. And of course, to offer credit services to their customers. That is one. Okay. And of course, bigger than that is Iran. I'm sure all of you would have heard of the word Stuxnet, Stuxnet. If you have not heard of that, please look it up. And it is part of, practically every single cybersecurity talk which one gives out. Because after Stuxnet, the term APT came across. That was Advanced Persistent Threat. That was a new term, which was like, so we had viruses, we had malware, we had Trojans, and we have this and that. And then we have APT, which is the mother of all or the father of all viruses. Okay. And what it did was, it again, third party. Third party was what? In that case, the Iranian nuclear facility in a place called Natanz, which the Iranians were building, a nuclear reactor over there. And I would say, they also had, so what happened was the centrifuges burned down because of Stuxnet. So Stuxnet infected the system which was looking at the centrifuge and increased the speed, which was not visible to anybody at the control center. And it was history. So I think $1 billion or whatever, and 10 years of work down the drain. Okay, so business at present also currently online tutoring. I'm sure all of you with children are having that same thing now, that the schools and colleges are having online lessons and online classes. So that has grown 300 or 400%, and it's opened up a huge market by itself. So as we get out, cybercrime will spike. Cloud adoption will grow, also spike. Work from home becomes a norm, becomes a new norm. Of course, there's a lot of people who still need to learn to work from home. Broadband services will make good money. E-commerce and delivery services are in huge demand even today. Broadband is also in huge demand right now. Hospitality and healthcare are vulnerable, will become highly vulnerable. And if you remember, when COVID just started out, there was some attacks on hospitals and all that, and there was a big pushback, or there was a big criticism of all that was happening, right? So then all the black hat hackers sort of stepped back and said that no, we will not attack any healthcare system or any medical company or any pharma company, whereas these guys are awesome targets. So right now, as we get out of the pandemic, hospitality and healthcare, hotels are anyway bad. If you know, Marriott has been hacked, I think 4 times or 5 times, and I don't know if this learned or not, but it's highly unlikely. Then there is ransomware and BEC. BEC is business email compromise. It's a very common manner of cheating, or I would say, defrauding people or companies of their money. How it works, simply speaking, you send an invoice to somebody, and a guy in the middle changes the invoice or changes the banking information. Sorry, changes the banking information. And it reaches your customer. Your customer makes the payment. The payment goes to a different bank. You keep waiting for the money over here, and one fine day, 1 week or 2 weeks later, you call up the customer and very nicely you say, "Hey guys, can you please make the money? I need the money." And the guy says, "I made the money 2 weeks back." And he said, "No, I didn't get it. So can you send me the bank, papers?" He said, "The bank papers." You find it's gone to a different bank, and that's when you realize that you've been cheated. happens. This is, by the way, a $1 billion industry as per the FBI. They did arrest, a gang of Nigerians, out of in which one was a millionaire also. This is about a year back, but it's not stopped. It's not stopped. Then there are personal vulnerabilities. You may be blackmailed, or you may fall for a romance scam, or you may have somebody stalking you, or you may have any type of thing which happens to you. Or then there is, of course, state monitoring and surveillance. We will see an increase in this, and we'll see it becoming more and more normal. And primarily, it's happening right now, but under as contact tracing. We don't call it surveillance right now, but we call it contact tracing. But it's anybody's guess that once this is out, once this is not required, whether those databases will be cleaned up and thrown out of the window, or they will be repurposed. Repurposing would probably be the easiest thing to do, and so we have to wait and watch that. Privacy loopholes will come in, which will be part of normal life, or BAU, as we come out of the system. Privacy loopholes will be normal, because like when we talk about surveillance and monitoring system by the law enforcement, or whosoever, I would say. Right now, there are big arguments happening about Google and Apple joining hands and doing global monitoring or whatever. And at one time, if Facebook was going to join them also, it was Facebook and Google. Then I don't know, they sort of had a fallout, and Facebook has now joined up with Jio in India, and Google and Apple, they have joined hands together. So it's anybody's guess who's going to do what and where, but you can surely wait for I would say things to happen with very small under the radar announcements. But this is the writing on the wall right now. Then, of course, cash flow problems and unemployment and startups. Startups are again another risk which will happen. Cash flow problems and unemployment is something which you will know much better about on the ground stuff, as again in your capacity as financial auditors. Unemployment is increasing right now, and happening across the Middle East also, where layoffs are happening in India also, where layoffs are happening. Besides that, there is a lot of cash flow issues even for individuals, with salary cuts and appraisals not happening, or salaries not being paid, stuff like that. Then we will see another thing happening is startups, small startups or individual startups, where individuals who are out of a job, probably they'll think in terms of becoming entrepreneurs if they don't get a job in time. And how efficient will they be is again another question. So will that be a risk? Yes, it will be a risk. And that is another thing which needs to be seen. So how old is the startup? Who is running it? What is this thing? Do they have policies, procedures, etc. in place? What? And otherwise, you have to keep them under the under watch totally while they are doing work. Undesired competition, absolutely. So if I am running a business today, like we Decipher and myself, we're running a business, and we have people who come up and start competing with us, we do call them undesired. And if they are not good or whatever, and they undercoat you or whatever, that's not desired. But that will be business as usual, and I don't think we can fight against that. We'll have to live with that, and we'll have to fight that competition. Now we look at the threat surface. I said the threat surface is what? The threat surface is what is exposed to any hacker who is unknown to you and which can be compromised. How much space does he have? So it's like you think of it as a building, which doesn't have any guards or any CCTV or whatever. Or you have a building which is X number of floors. Half of those floors do not have a CCTV camera or any this thing. So that is your threat surface. Anything can go wrong over there. Somebody can come in, a terrorist can come in, put a bomb. Somebody can come in and just take possession of the place and without any this thing, right? So, and now with occupancy of the offices there, where they are saying that when you open up, you should not have more than 50% of your workforce. Okay, half the workforce will be remote, and office occupancy will not be more than 50%. Some people are talking about 30% or 25%, right? So when you have teleworkers and stay working from home, at home there are different types of risks. When you're working from home, you're not under the eyes or the watchful eyes of the security team or the audit guys, right? So here you are away from them, so you can do your own thing. You're independent. You can fly. You're a bird. That is the threat surface which will now grow, and that's the killing fields for any black hat guy. The vulnerability of the remote worker. The remote worker may be thinking that he is in a great job, in a great position, but after some time he or she is bound to become morose, psychologically weak, overlook something or the other. This worker will have unauthorized, will probably indulge in some unauthorized use of the official devices for family or personal work. Okay, or or maybe a child will come and drop some water on that. Home Wi-Fi router misconfigured, weak, and hackable. Or somebody picks up your router traffic and starts working on that, because I know where you stay. Now you are maybe the senior guy or the senior salesperson in some company. I know where you stay, and I come and I sort of tap in on your Wi-Fi. Who is looking at that? I don't know who's suddenly looking at that. I have 2 clients right now who got people or very active, and they can't look at them. They say you've got 1,000 people working from home, each of them. How many Wi-Fi routers can I check? I said, not about how many can you check. You have to check. You don't ask that question. You can't do a sampling check over here. Then there's shadow IT risks. Shadow IT, for the people over here who don't know what shadow IT means, it basically means that I tell my sysadmin, hey, I want to put this new software to show me movies or to do whatever, or to show me what's happening in Mars and Moon and Sun. And the system admin guy says, sorry, our company policy does not allow you to look at the Mars, Moon, and Sun. It allows you to look only at Saturn and Venus. Okay, so what I do, I am a smart guy. So what I do is I go to the internet and I find somebody to help me out and give me the idea of how to circumvent my system, and I do that. Or another shadow IT can be where we have a Amazon account and I ask for some additional resources over there, and the guy and I'm told no, just do it in this thing only. So I set up a separate what do you call it? I make a personal account on Amazon to run whatever I was running. I have a large data set and I'm doing some analytics on that. So I say, no, let me do it over there. Then I'll bring the reports and whatever the results over here. That is shadow IT. So I'm shadowing the IT in its own way, because I'm smarter than the IT guy, which is wrong. I am not smarter than the IT guy, but I'm foolish in my own way by doing that and circumventing the process or the policy of the company. Okay. Then there's software installations. I can install anything and everything, which is without knowing whether it's good, bad, or ugly. That's another area. And of course, cloud. Cloud is huge. Cloud has been growing and growing and growing, and will become bigger and bigger. So we'll spend some time looking at cloud, of course. Okay, so we can stop for a moment. We can stop for about 5 minutes over here and look at what we have. And we have 11.
I think by and large, everybody is agreeing that it will increase. The budget will increase. The percentages are different, as mentioned by different people.
Okay. Answer is yes, percentage depending on how much security savvy was pre-COVID, someone having lower Pre-spending. Shilpa says definitely go up. Working from home will require more data to be on cloud, requiring more spend. That will be cloud spending, not security spending. So security, if of course they people normally think that when you're on the cloud you're secure, which is not the case. So grow by at least 25%. Chintan, Gopi says 40 to 50%. Barani says 30% at least. Krishna Prasad says it will grow, and due to the current atmosphere, all sorts of solutions will get dumped until verified by users. You're so right. Ramanand also says 40%. Raghunathan says no significant change in my organization. You better tell them to do it. Bhavani 20%, Sandeep also 20%, 20%. So let's say an average of 25 to 30% is the average. Okay, which sounds pretty decent. In terms of says it's going to grow up, you all say it is going to grow. I have a sort of a contrarian point of view. The sense that it will grow, yes, even right now it's growing and people have to spend money. I think once the opening keeps happening, the opening is not going to, it's not a one-day opening, but it will take some time for the opening to happen completely. Okay, so to begin with, there is going to be funding issues with every company, and they may not really, even spend as much, but the risk will grow. They will spend only in areas which is sort of desperately or critically needed. Like let us say work from home. So you have to anyhow somehow or the other secure that. So the point being is that it probably the spending may have a dip as it opens up, but over a period of time, 6 months, 1 year, as it becomes, when you say the new normal takes place, then that new normal will of course be much more. And one area, yes, which I do expect that even the moment it opens up, they will spend is that BCP and DR, business continuity planning and DR. Because this is right now on my mind, on everybody's mind, that we did not do this, we did not do this, how do we do that? That is possibly which I do feel. Not significant because even before COVID last year, at the time when ransomware, we upgraded our security requirements. That's right, Jagannathan. See, you're right in that way. See, it's normal to keep increasing or to keep looking at your security budget. But the point being that see, right now today, revenue, everybody has either stagnated revenue or dipped a large dip in revenue, and some of them will be on the verge of closing also. And some of them have to take drastic measures like layoff or salary cuts or whatever. So as I go back into business, will I spend on security to begin with? Is a big question. I don't have an answer except for a gut feel. Okay, and I'm sure that's why I put the question out to you. And I was very happy when I was asked by ICAI to sort of talk to you guys. I was happy because I thought I didn't know that I can get an answer from you guys, and see, so I'm very happy to be proven wrong when there is this bullish sort of response from all of you guys in terms of this thing, and it is contrary to my own thinking. But thank you very much for your inputs, and thank you for making me feel better. So I'm very happy that I'm going to be walking into a bigger sort of opportunity, I would say. Of course, it's normal. It's also normal that every I would say adversity, every adversity comes with an opportunity. So if in every risk there is an opportunity. So it's either way which way you look at it, whether you see the glass is half full or half empty. So that way. But anyway, let's get back. So thanks a lot for everybody. And like I said, cloud, like you even from the responses, everybody is aware of cloud and everybody understands that cloud is the thing. And over the years, it has, of course, held out great promise, and the promise increases, and the necessity of cloud increases also. So that's why you need to look at it very closely. Because even personally, we are on the cloud. And officially we are on the cloud. So we have AWS, we have Azure, Google, DigitalOcean, the cloud platform providers. The Salesforce is there providing us with the CRM model, CRM system, and which is a huge CRM system. Lots more. Okay. We have Office 365, we have Gmail, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, WhatsApp, e-commerce, cab services. We have so much which is out in the cloud, which we are using day in and day out, and we're using it just like, it's become second nature for us. And when it's not available, we start, we have withdrawal symptoms. And cloud computing will grow. The global market set to exceed 330 billion in 2020. This is 2020 by Gartner. But as we talk today, I'm sure this number will have to be revisited by Gartner. And I'm sure that the number will go up by 10, 20% or 50% more. We consider the fact that everybody has gone to the cloud or everybody is going. There's another report which talked about 2019 and 2020, which said about, I think 70 to 80% companies are on the cloud, or 90%, possibly, because if they take the email services also, then you are on the cloud by itself. So O365, Gmail, these are the most common ones. Of course, from India and other places, there is also Zoho and Zoho. Hotmail was there, but no more, of course. Then there are the free systems also. There are so many free email systems. The models for SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. Now, I hope you guys know about this. SaaS is software as a service, PaaS is platform as a service, and IaaS is infrastructure as a service. So any of these cloud service providers can give you software as a service. So like Salesforce is giving you software as a service. Platform and infrastructure is provided by, let's say, companies like AWS, Amazon, and Azure from this thing, right? So where you don't need to buy your hardware, you can just set up the hardware. You can just go online and you can select the RAM and the hard drive and the power of the machine which you want, and you can get it over there. So it is as simple and as easy as that. So what happens from the economics perspective? You are shifted from capex to opex, right? And major infrastructure risk is transferred. So all that you need is a laptop or a desktop in your office. You connect over there, and you are this thing. Of course, having said that, it's not that there are no risks. There may be also the risk of outage at the at the cloud provider, but that is not. That's a pretty rare occasion. As it happened a couple of times in the last 1 year, 2 years or so, but it's very rare. And all these guys have very, very, I would say, detailed, architected backup and fallback systems. So it's pretty pretty reliable, I must say. And then being on cloud allows you to scale up or scale down at will. You don't need 24 GB of RAM. You need 24 GB today for 1 hour. You take it for 1 hour. Then you just need your regular 8 GB of RAM, put it back. So you just paid for that 1 hour. When you use 24 GB, you're back to 24, which would be very, very difficult to do when you have the hardware in your house. But of course, there are dark clouds, right? So you have nice, sunny clouds, and you have dark clouds too. And you have cloud fails. How do you have cloud failing? Through access management, weak configuration of the system, orphaned instances and accounts, application vulnerabilities. Okay, and of course there are some victims also. Now the victims can be people who have been compromised and their accounts are compromised. Access is when my roles and responsibilities and my RACI chart is not properly defined. Weak configuration is when I have an account and I'm not I have not configured the account properly. And this reminds me of Zoom. So everybody was talking about Zoom, and everybody continues to talk about Zoom, and the various risks of using Zoom. But those risks were there in the beginning when the Zoom vulnerabilities were discovered. Later on, those guys have updated or whatever. And today, you are supposed to enable security controls in the application, which if you have done it, we are safe. If we have not done it, we are unsafe. And we are unsafe if you've not done configurations, security configuration, anything. Orphan instances or accounts, we talked about shadow IT. That basically is what it is. You create something and you let it be and you forget about it. Application vulnerabilities is what I have. Let's say I have something on AWS and I have taken infrastructure from them. It's hosting my application and my application is vulnerable. Now, if somebody hacks that, you can't blame AWS. You have to blame yourself. So people, that is where you see what happens is people think that being on the cloud, I am safe. It's like the old, say if you go back about a few years, about 10 years, and somebody, you go and ask somebody that, hey, why you want to put security in place? No, I don't need it. I have a firewall. So that sort of mindset is there today in terms of cloud. So if somebody has taken a AWS or an Azure or a Google account, say, oh, I'm on Google, I'm on Facebook, I'm safe. No, you're not. You have, because there are two things over here. There is a host and there's a tenant. Now the host has given you the place where you can go and reside, but you are not responsible for the host's hardware or the system. You're responsible for yourself, what you have put over there and what you are doing. Your data that is what you're responsible for, and you have to take care that it is configured properly, it is set up properly, it is accessed by the people who are the right people. No unauthorized stuff happens. All that has to be taken care of. So this is sort of unfortunate, but things which happen. It's not surprising also, and this is quite new. In the month of March, 425 gigs in my company, client data through open database, right? There's an adult site. This is a bit older, yes. Again, S3 bucket. S3 is the Amazon, data store with about 20 gig of GB of visible data over there. This is just about a week or 10 days back. I'm sure all of you read about this. So this was cscbheem.in. Which is CSC stands for Customer Service Center. So these guys were doing the KYC for Bheem, for people who are registering for Bheem. And they had 409 gigabytes of data, which is lying unsecured on cloud storage. 70 lakh per data sets out. And this is the stuff which had Aadhaar card, caste certificate, PAN cards, full name, address, etc., whatever you want, right? And of course, it hits everybody. Like we said earlier, anybody and everybody is this thing. So you have, if you see here, September 25th, 2017, October 11, 2017, Deloitte and Accenture. The reason I put the three of them, the first, if you see the first, Google report, the Google record, the search record. This is, if you follow that, you'll go to Deloitte's page where they are offering you services for security services for your cloud instances. And it's a paradox over here that the next item is Deloitte being hacked over there. So they also left their S3 bucket unprotected, okay, and so did Accenture. But of course, this is that happens to the best of people. And if you look down, you will find huge government organizations, private organizations. Everybody has been hit by it sometime or the other. It's not something to be embarrassed about. If, for example, if you have a fire in your office, you don't get embarrassed because there was a fire over there. So this is a disaster. Okay, the reason why people are embarrassed is because they may not have spent enough money on that. They may have overlooked what was needed to spend. And it is not very easy to find what you have overlooked or who has said no. Whereas in a fire, it's very easy that, oh, you don't have a fire extinguisher, you don't have firefighting equipment, you don't have a fire marshal, you've never done a fire drill. So here are the, handcuffs. Let's go to jail, that sort of thing. So just some more statistics over here. And they're scary, of course. 2018, 2019, 33.4 billion records exposed due to cloud misconfiguration, which really amounts to about $5 trillion. In 2018, 81 breaches, 115 in 2019, 42% increase. I'm sure right now when we get the 2020 figures, there will be another exponential increase over there also. S3, the configuration account was 16%, 42% experience a merger or acquisition transaction. Now here something again, gentlemen, ladies, in your business, you will be party many a time to mergers and acquisitions. There is another area which you have to be careful about. In your role as internal auditor, as financial auditor, as security auditor, as auditor in any role, okay? So during a merger or an acquisition, that is a time when a lot of sensitive information is passed to each other. Yes, of course. But a lot of times where a lot of stuff is put on the carpet also. Okay. So what is there, what is not there, what is clean, what is not clean, something which you have to take care of. Tech companies, 41% were tech companies over here who got exposed over here. And of course, the number of records are in billions. So global cloud computing, 330 billion. We talked about this earlier. And do we see this? Again, this is from Gartner. Here they talk about 411 billion, which is much more higher than what is being talked about earlier. But what they have done, of course, is taken cloud business processes or business process services, as well as infra services, as well as PaaS and SaaS and IaaS and advertising also. So they've taken these 6 sort of services together, and then they've come to a total of 411 billion, which is huge, which is very, very huge. And I'm sure as you guys go back and you will see 2020, 2021, the next year budgets coming out for IT as well as for this thing, you will find a paradigm shift towards cloud computing. And of course, there is benefits over there, no doubt. As you see, you will move from OPEX to CAPEX, which will be easier. You will find that it is easier to sort of scale up or scale down. Absolutely right. At the same time, I think there is a very big need for you as financial geniuses to be able to teach your CIOs, CTOs, as well as the CISOs, a thing or two about financial accounting and financial budgeting and financial prudence. Very necessary. One thing which also needs to be given out to these technology team people is a method of ROI. There is also ROI, which is a common thing, and which is really, I'm sure there are a lot of arguments in your management meetings when you don't get an ROI, figure, because it is said to be a cost center. But no, it's not a cost center. It's also a center where services are provided to the company, and anything where something is going out or it's being provided, it should not be difficult to put a measure to that. It has to be slightly inventive, and it can be done. Okay. Now, along with ROI, so there is something called ROSI, the return on security investment. That is now security specific. Okay. But I have one more. I have tried it, but not many clients have taken it. I'm so sorry to say, but this is return on utilization. Okay, return on utilization basically means that, okay, like even if we take cloud services, now if I have purchased cloud services, am I using it to let us say 100%? 100% would not be possible ever. And I should not look at 100% utilization. I should look at over 50 to 60% utilization, 70% utilization, because there has to be a buffer up or down. And if I don't have that buffer, I'll be in trouble, of course. So 60%, I am home. But there should be utilization. And you will find that when you will do an asset inventory, not a financial asset inventory, but when you do a information asset inventory from the security risk perspective, you will find at least 20 to 30% unutilized assets. And that may be a small or a large company. And forget the company. After this session, today or tomorrow is of course a working day for you. It's a Sunday, right? But maybe you can put on your to-do calendar for Friday, Saturday, for the coming Friday, Saturday. You know, just do assessment of your own laptop, or forget your laptop. Do an inventory of your own cupboard, and you will be pleasantly surprised to find some things which you purchased and you have never used, some things which you purchased and you were going to buy again, and some things which you purchased and it's a eureka moment for you right now. Oh man, I have got this. How nice! I'll wear it today. That sort of thing. So if you do it on your cupboard, you will understand what I'm talking about. If you do it on your laptop, okay, it will be much more than a eureka moment for your laptop itself, because you will save a lot of disk space, and your laptop will become faster once you finish that. So moving on, another question number 2 for the auditor audience. Okay. So looking ahead to the post-COVID future. Oh, sorry. There is something wrong in my sequence over here. But that question will come. It's an AI-based question. And to just tell you, that question is basically about the need for automation in audit processes, and what processes should be automated. So that is what our world tomorrow is, by the way. It's hazy. The future is hazy. I can make predictions. Yes, I may be wrong. Anybody in the world can make predictions, and can be right or can be wrong. It's about throwing sand in the air. So this is what would happen: monitoring and scoring, which is surveillance, as we go into the new tomorrow, right? Sorry, this was my question. My sequence of slides has gone a bit bad. So up to what extent, this is the question for the auditors right now, up to what extent or percentage can the audit process be automated? And if not all processes, then what are the top 3 processes in BFSI audits that should be automated? Again, the same rules. We will look at it a bit later. I only hope my request, my answer, my response request slide is not in the same sequence up ahead. Slightly ahead. AI and ML. AI is artificial intelligence. ML is machine learning. This is going to make the world go round. How? Through supply chain automation, through robotics, business process automation, digital transformation. I'm sure many of you are working with clients in digital transformation also. It's a very, very large and a growing area of for advisory services. Factory or farm to consumer. With the, I would say, the high level of non-availability of the middleman during these last few months. Okay. And that has been a very big issue, and to bring people that way. I must give my personal experience that in these 2 months, we've had some family friends who have traveled from various villages to the city and given us mangoes and given us some vegetables and all that. So, of course, against payment, but it's like from farm they've driven down and they've come down with a car or their SUV filled up with the produce which they have sold and then gone back home. Then of course digital banking and payments, another very big area for for AI and ML I would say applications. Surveillance and monitoring, we just saw that those slides were in the wrong place, but we just saw surveillance and monitoring. Network and application security. Security in the network, security on the applications. These are both which are under constant attack, and there is a limit to how much a human being can see, or can react to. A, and B is there is also a limit on how many human beings can you deploy to keep watching your network as it grows and grows and grows. So there will be a very big need for AI and ML to be brought in, which already is there, but except that yes, they are not sophisticated, I would say, to that extent where they can sort of really give value to you. Autonomous vehicles, another very big area. There was a what do you call it, study done by one of the universities over there in the US, and they came up with the finding that there are 13,600 pieces of 13,600 data pieces which are pulled out from any autonomous vehicle. So you can imagine this about the humongous amount of data coming out of there, and that is the threat surface. What can go wrong, what can't go wrong, who can play with it, who can't play with it. Drones for good, drones for bad, both. As well as, of course, now drones have already been tested for delivery. How soon will they happen is anybody's guess, and I'm sure they will go pretty soon. Then, of course, there's the Internet of Things and industrial Internet of Things. So, being in the Middle East, you will find IIoT being deployed in the oil and gas sector. Okay. And Internet of Things is again where you have smart homes and you have connected devices, and or you have like they're doing in Sweden now. In Sweden, there are a number of companies who already implanted chips under the skin with the employees, so they don't have to bring in a card or something or do biometric check, and they just walk in. And that same chip, then the guys can use it when he's at home, get his things working, open his car, or do whatever he wants to do. But this is what is going to happen. And it's anybody's writing, frankly speaking, that this is something, of course, which I can say with definite distinct, that the amount of investment in AI, the amount of investment in ML will have to go through the roof, And that may happen in the near term itself, because as we come out, we all know by now that things are not working, things will not work. And if I'm going to cut down my workforce, how am I going to get the whole thing done again? We know what this is, right? And our lifestyle will change. Is changing also, I should say. So masks, gloves, washing hands, waiting for the vaccine, occupancy of vehicles right now, occupancy in the workplace, the density of people in a public place, and digital communication. Digital communication we are doing right now, and this will extend to the family, which was already there, I'm sure, with all of you as expats over there with families back home in India or elsewhere, and I'm sure you are in touch on a daily basis on WhatsApp video, WhatsApp chat, or whatever. And of course, that will now increase. So earlier, let us say the elders in the family did not know what would be this thing, but today everybody is very familiar with that. Then, of course, travel. There will be restrictions, of course, and we are already seeing, the sort of controls which have been put into air travel and rail and other travel modes. Work from home become normal. You may there will be sort of a dip in the amount of takeout orders or whatever. Virtual education, so you'll have more of home cooked food than anything else. because you wouldn't trust anybody handling food coming to you. Like we talked about earlier, the trust level has gone down or will go down more. Virtual education is huge. Education is huge. All schools, all colleges, all universities going into the same virtual mode. A lot of training, professional training going virtual also. And sessions like ours, again, this is again the same way. Maybe if it was normal time, we would have been invited to come to Oman and do it from there and do it in person. But these are abnormal times, and times have changed. So that's how we are. So we are socially distanced, but we are able to sort of communicate and present what we can. Yes, I do miss one thing, of course. I do miss the fact that I cannot see the audience. I cannot see people smile, or react to what I say. So if I crack a joke, that joke, and I'm the only guy who's smiling at myself, and I don't know anybody who's laughed or said, no, that was a bad joke. So, and I can't tell everybody to say, open up their mics and say, hey, if it was a bad joke, please abuse me. No, I don't want to hear that also. But yes, I think we live with this until we are able to see everybody together. Because one more, of course, there's another risk. If I ask everybody to come on video, then my bandwidth is hogged out, and maybe I'll sort of drop out anyway. I don't know. But see, anyway, that we live with what we have. Maybe things will become much more sophisticated with time. So risk is something which we live with every day, like I said earlier. And of course, from a professional perspective, again, yes, we will live with it. So there's unpatched vulnerabilities, which is the Achilles heel of any company. You don't patch it, you're dead. Somebody or other finds it an easiest way to come inside. Then, of course, there is compliance. You don't comply and you're in trouble. Losses will become bigger, and the number of breaches may become less, because each breach will become much bigger and bigger. Let's take the Cognizant this thing. You all know about Cognizant, which was hacked. It had a ransomware attack, I think about 2-3 months back. And apparently the bill is about 500 crores or 10 million or $15 million. And they had to, of course, declare it, because they're a US company, and it happened in the US. Ransomware repurpose. Now, this is another big dangerous thing which is there. Very, very risky. So if they ask you for ransom and you don't pay ransom, and you because you have a backup and you have everything in place, so you don't need to pay a ransom, you just need to change your hard drive and just do it all over again. What these guys would do, they say, okay, buddy, you've not paid us. Now, what are you going to do is we're going to put all your information out on the net for public, in the public domain. And which is much more dangerous. Which this was done in Sony TV's case. That was about 7 years back. But that was, of course, not a ransom requirement, but the hacker had just done the thing, put Sony emails and everything out. And that was very, very embarrassing for Sony. Then the third party and your vendors, that is a big risk which has to be taken care of through regular audits and through awareness sessions and whatever. Right. Now, there is another risk in this itself, in the third party risk assessment also. The risk which I have found, I've been doing, I have had a lot of third party risk assessments and responses to which they come to me. So my client has maybe, is a vendor to some large company, and they send across a risk assessment questionnaire. Now that questionnaires which I've been getting are, you can sort of, if it is just, because it's just a checklist thing, 300 questions, and where they're asking you questions where they say that give us your VAPT report, give us your audit report. And you have to turn back and tell them, sorry, we don't do it. This is a confidential document. How can I give you the VAPT report of my system, of my this thing? I can tell you that it has been done. Yes. I can tell you it's been closed. Yes. But there are questions like that. And they are just copied and pasted questions. 300 questions, can you imagine? It takes you 3 days to do that, to answer each question properly. And when you're answering the question, you can be dead sure that the guy is not going to read anything. That he or she will read just the first, maybe 10-20 lines, and then that's it, and say everything is fine. And then you just scroll down and see, okay, all the answers have been there, finished. That's it. Then there are, of course, the old threats like business email compromise, IPR theft, malware, etc. And another big area is emails, which you have to be very careful about. As an auditor, you don't need to know about email security or whatever, but ask your customer, ask your client to make sure email has been secured. Ask them what they are doing, and there are tons of information on what should be done for email security. So I don't want to go into that, like things like DMARC, SPF, this, that, or whatever. No, but just do it and ask that guy to do this thing. It doesn't cost money. It is not an effort, but it makes you easy. So things like even like phishing, for example. Now you may want to see something like what is the Puni code, PUNYCODE. Just go and look up what Puni code is and see what it can do for you. These are very, very, I would say, small things which can lead to the this thing. So it's like that same old adage, one ant can kill an elephant. This is sort of thing this is an ant, and the organization is an elephant. You don't know what can happen. So if you see this graphic over here, the delivery method, email 94%, via the web 23%, others so much. The totals are not okay. The totals they don't add up to 100. But this is only from I just took it out from a report. Okay, and what does it affect you? Where does it hit you? It hits you on Office documents. It hits you on Windows applications. I am sure you are aware that I can weaponize what we call it. It is called weaponization. I can weaponize a Word document. I can weaponize an Excel document. So when you start a Word or an Excel document, you see that there is a warning, enable macros, right? I can do a lot over there. I can weaponize a graphic image also. Today, if I take a picture of myself and I send it across to you, I can weaponize that picture also. You would not know about it. So I can send malware into your system by sending it through a picture. So these are ways of, like I said, okay, you don't need to know rocket science. You don't need to, but you can just put up the simple defenses to do that. Your clients should put up a simple defenses. So AI, we are looking at AI and how it was fooled by a street sign. The more, let's say, this is what happens. So where does the vulnerability lie? I can fool the autonomous vehicle, and it maybe it crashes and has an accident and kills the person sitting inside. In that case, who is responsible for the death? Today, if I am driving a car and I hit somebody and that person dies, I am the person who's responsible. My insurance company pays for it. Tomorrow, it's an autonomous vehicle. It's a driverless vehicle. What happens? So we can get the responses to the automation question, and let us see how many there are. There are 6 responses. 60 to 70% automation is possible. Very good. Automation process. Narayanan says 20 to 25% to begin with. It may grow further. Jivu says 60 to 70%. Great. And Krishna Prasad, to be scaled up to the extent possible for each industry based on, it could range from 30 to 70%. Up to what extent can the audit process be automated? If not all, what is it? Okay. 30% approximately, depending on the availability of data and flow persistence. Okay, so we have what? The jury is out, 60 to 70, say about 65 to 70%, or it is about this thing. So let us say half, we will still, let us say, if we say half, I think if we say 50%, we could still be okay. But I have a follow-up question to this. That does any one of you have automation, even to the extent of 30, 40% in the audit process? And that is one, of course. And would your client be willing to invest in that? See, till date, it would have been difficult for the customer, for your client to really think about automating. And if you go back, all of you are familiar with Tally, I'm sure. How easy was it for you to get somebody to spend money on Tally? You go back to version 2, version 3. Okay, even though it was not very expensive, but everybody went for the pirated version. So it'll take time, but of course, as you come out of the lockdown and all that, I'm sure there will be opportunity over there which you can look at. So because there is agreement all around over here among you, the community of auditors, that yes, automation is the right way to go. So I think that would be a great investment, or for you to have somebody to invest in that area. Okay, so this is done. Risk, we talked about unpatched vulnerabilities, data losses, and all that. We talked about that. And this is what, let us say, the wheel of fortune comes in over here. So when we're going to a normal X.O, I didn't say normal 1.0 or 2.0 or 4.0, because we just don't know what .0 we are in. That's why I said it's X. So it's either next generation or it's next version or whatever. But what we'll be looking at is increased data demands. There will be global data stores. You will be under 24/7 monitoring and watching. Your financial profile is going to be, under scrutiny. Just for your information, this is about a year and a half, 2 years back. The Income Tax Department in India, they had put out a tender for appointing a consultant who would be able to provide them with a system for monitoring social media. What was their objective was to basically look at to see people who are traveling abroad and having fun in wherever they are, and so that they are able to sort of okay, Ashwini, great. So it is about they would be looking at people who have traveled abroad and looking at having fun in 5-star hotels or in exotic destinations. And when they are back home, the income tax guys would go and ask them, where do you get the money from, and please account for whatever you spent over there. So financial profiling and monitoring and watching you, who will do that, who will not do that, separate thing. Smart cities are coming up. How smart? Actually, you'll have smart cities and dumb people over there. And then you have support services from all these various departments and organizations which do not want you to come and meet them, and which will expect you to make phone calls or connect with them on digital means. Phone calls, of course, is something which we would like to stay away from, because we all know you call up any call center and you have to wait for about 10 minutes before somebody can talk to you. And biometrics will be again in demand everywhere, wherever you go, whichever country you go, whichever office you go, wherever you go, they will demand biometrics from you. Technology enslavement, yes, for everything there will be a technology, there will be an app. Whatever you do, whatever you say, there will be an app. And so you will need to put technology in place. Personal information is given out wherever everybody who asks for it. The government or your companies may have centralized databases to capture all the information which they're bringing in and to do analytics on that, right? You will have digital IDs, which you may not need to carry around. You may have contact and digital IDs. And like I said, you may have a chip under your skin. You should see that video on YouTube. They just have a small injection, and it just sort of, boom, it sort of injects a small chip inside your hand over here. So whenever you go someplace, you just do this, and that's good enough. So even your payments are done in the same manner. And of course, there is voice, and there is voice, and there is facial recognition, which is very big also. So this is what we are looking at, new normal or whatever. So this is, I hope I've been able to share some information, or about whatever it is in terms of cybersecurity, what's coming up, what is the new normal, and how it will affect you, the risks, and what sort of things you could take care of. So this is a little bit of a small, I would say, self-promotion thing over here. We do VAPTV, all this, of course, work, and this will be given out to you. And this, my personal information will be on the presentation also. And thank you once again. And I am now at the end of this thing, and I hand it over to you, Ashwini. Thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you. I think we can take questions now from the members.
Yeah, sure. Rajesh is also, I think, on. Rajesh, can we also join in?
Rajesh, you're there?
Yes, I'm online.
If anyone wanted to ask the questions, you can inbox or raise the hands.
I don't think any questions.
I can ask something.
Yeah, sure. Please.
You had a question on the audit being automated, audit process.
Right.
Being automated. So that the attached question or the thing which always comes up is that whether audit as a profession is going to become obsolete with the automation, or if we have tools or software enough to have 100% audit, then is the audit profession leading towards an obsolete thing? And what is it that companies should be doing? Because we have auditors as well as we have CFOs in this group.
Correct.
So if you could.
Yeah, see, actually, when we talk about artificial intelligence, the first thing which comes to mind is that you will become obsolete. Now, let's take a walk into memory lane and go. When was it that the banks became automated or had computers? That was about 1995, 98, or when? Around that time, right? 2000 or whatever. I think after Y2K. And if you remember, in India, there was a big bank strike because the unions said that if you bring computers, we will all lose our jobs. That was one. The second promise which was made by the computers was that you will become paperless. And both, if you see, you can you can use the acronym of the day, ROTFL, for both the issues. You have many more people manning those computers, and you are producing more paper than you did before. Right? Earlier, you had just one ledger. You would just enter in that ledger. Today, you are making printouts and doing each KYC which we do. Those guys take 6 pieces of paper from us. Where does the paper go? I don't know. Okay. Now to answer your question, automation, obsolescence. I showed you that one slide where we saw that AI, the autonomous car, being fooled by the sign, right? You need somebody to look at that. Then there's another problem with AI is that it is like, it is racial also, supposedly. So if you are fair skinned, it will recognize you. If you are dark skinned, it won't recognize you. So that is also that has happened. Okay. So when I automate, what's going to happen? I also mentioned that third-party risk assessment, which with 300 questions. And we all know it very well that when you have a report which is 30-40 pages, nobody in this world is going to read those 30-40 pages. Nobody. Right? Except for the person who is a brand new junior person, ki ye padho and understand karo, that you will learn a lot from here. Okay. Now, having said all this, the report generated by the automated system has to be seen by somebody or signed off by somebody. Now that somebody is neck on the line. I'm sure that qualified person is not going to sign off just without reading anything, right? So that's where the whole thing then comes up. So if my system is automated, what is the guarantee that me as an auditee will upload the correct evidence or will give you the right answer? So somebody has to read it at that end. Now, if the machine responds to me that, no, what you're saying is wrong, that machine has to be intelligent enough to be able to understand what I'm saying is wrong or right. But it doesn't have a human brain to be able to sort of, say that 2 plus 2 is also 4 and 22 at the same time. The machine will say 2 plus 2 is 4. It can't say 22. Whereas the human being, especially an Indian human being, has the power of a jalebi in his mind or her mind. So when we think in circles. We don't think in straight lines. That is why we make good auditors. So I don't see that sort of risk to your profession in the sense, don't worry, your job is there. Your profession is not going anywhere. Rather, you will be contributing to that intelligence, and that is going to crash systems because of the way we think. And there's nothing to beat, I would say, the face-to-face interaction which you have with an auditee. When you know that the guy is telling lies, and you have to pin down the lies and get that person to actually tell you that no, what I said was wrong.
And of course, forensics auditing is also coming up a big way.
Forensic auditing is coming up huge, very huge, and it's like I would say all these domains. The black hole is very large, in terms of the number of people or the number of people who have the skill but are not in the profession. So somebody, let us say, who's a CA with 10, 20 years of experience, he or she is a natural to move into forensic auditing. Okay, but forensic auditing, what I have seen the CAs getting into is manual again. And then they call a techie guy to do that. I did a couple of assignments in Dubai for this. So there was this firm which had brought in their statutory auditors, and a team of 5 guys sitting for about 3 months, going through 15 years of accounts, identifying vouchers more than $1 million. And then they called us. So we did that job for them in 2 weeks. But of course, they didn't have all the data also because their old accounting system was down and this and that or whatever. But whatever we could find, we did. And then what they did is that they took that data from us and then they would pull out the vouchers for those dates from there. It is very easy for an auditor, for a financial auditor to move into forensic accounting. And again, there's no this thing. There are these tools which are available, and with you only have to learn the tool. And that's it. And even if you don't learn the tool, you just know what the tool does. And you can easily guide somebody who knows the tool next to you. There are lots of young guys, young boys and girls who will be very happy to do that. And I'm sure there are lots of young boys and girls in the audit community also who can take that path. And it's very high paying, very high paying.
Would you or Rajesh like to share some experiences with us about any of the cyber crime instances which were solved or anything like that? We just have a few minutes for that and then we are good to wrap up.
Yeah, Ashwini, there were quite a few cases that I have handled over the past for law enforcement agencies over here in India. Again, since we are talking about forensics, we did some digital forensics in the 2016 multi-million dollar call center scam that had happened over here in India. So we had around 600 hardware devices, hard disks. We had another 400-500 mobile devices and tons of data. That is the challenge that me as a techie was trying to interpret the financial data. To be very honest, I can retrieve data, but on the financial front, we had to call in auditors who would put that data into its right perspective for us to make some kind of a logical statement out of the data that was there. This in today's world, it is not only a techie who can work, you need a financial auditor who understands what those Excel sheets mean. I mean, we had written thousands of Excel sheets, but then
Rajesh, I think your voice is either breaking or.
Yeah. I mean, we just got hit 2 days back by the cyclone. So, the ISP. ISP is giving me trouble for the past 2 days. So that's why I, shifted off the video. But yes, as I was saying that, we do require people who are very well versed in finance, accounting, and auditing, especially to find out any kind of evidence that is recovered. The technology team or any other law enforcement team. So yes, you can mix both of them. Like Dinesh said, yes, a machine cannot do everything that a human can do. It can just help you 20-40% to do your work. But end of the day, it's a human who decides what exactly is correct or what is wrong. And that's why I do it.
Right. So good. I think we are nearing the end of the session, and I think one question I have is that would this presentation be shared with our members who have attended this?
Yeah, sure. I'll send it across to you.
Sure, that would be great. That would be wonderful.
I would say the resequence it because like I told you, and of course there are a few spelling errors also. I'm sorry. My apologies to everybody who's here. I don't usually make such mistakes, but हो गया.
होता है.
नहीं होना नहीं चाहिए. So it's like but yes, it's happened. It's do not happen. There's gross error at my end. My apologies to everybody. But I will share it. Yes, I will share it later today itself.
Sure. Thank you. Sure. So over to you, CA Jibu.
So I think no more questions, sir. We go ahead with the vote of thanks as well as the presentation of the certificate. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Jibu, for this, hosting this program. On behalf of Muscat chapter, I thank Dinesh Bareja ji for your, excellent, informative, and taking all of us into the deep dive into the security, into the new normal, and taking us a new journey which is still yet to be witnessed. Thank you for sharing all your experiences and all taking our members a new thought process altogether. Now I request our treasurer CA Sajeev ji to present the e-certificate.
Sure, Prabhuji, I'll just share for Rajesh. This is the e-certificate to Mr. Rajesh. Yes. And I'll share the new share. And certificate to Mr. Dinesh Bareja. Thank you so much for being with us and a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Security. Over to Prabhuji.
Thank you, Sajeev ji, for the presentation of e-certificate. I once again, on behalf of Muscat chapter, thanks Mr. Dinesh Bareja ji. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh Sapkal ji, from right away from Pune, despite of the law, as we said, the reception. We are still able to communicate each other, and we are here in this platform of this new webinar series 2020 of Muscat chapter.
Right.
We also thank our sponsors, College of Banking and Financial Studies, for their continued support and the patronage for all our chapter activities. I also thank all invitees, guests, attendees, and members of overseas and members of Muscat chapter to attend this webinar. I also thank all my managing committee members, Ashwini ji, to bring this panel of experts today of cybersecurity. Thank you, Jibu. Thank you, all my MC colleagues. Thank you, one and all. Stay safe
Yeah.
and stay healthy, and look forward to connect with all you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Yeah. Virtual namaste to you.
Virtual namaste. And once things are normal, we will catch up soon.
Absolutely. We'll be very happy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Get
Thank you.
get connected with the Muscat chapter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jibu, it is time to sign off.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think members have
Sanjeev ji.
also started signing off, so then we can close the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.